Hello and welcome to the Tracy Sandler Show, brought to you by FIVO. I am your host, Tracy Sandler, and absolutely thrilled to welcome to the show NFL Network insider, who you can find on the Insiders Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific on the NFL Network, Ian Rapoport. Ian, welcome to the Tracy Sandler Show.
What's going on? Thank you for having me. Very good to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, and on a very busy day, as it turns out. This morning, you broke some pretty big news out of Minnesota. Justin Jefferson, with his 4-year, $140 million deal, $110 million guaranteed, I believe are all the correct numbers there. So for 49ers fans, they want to know, what does this mean for Brandon Aiyuk?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, for Justin Jefferson, I mean, it's a massive deal. It's what he should get. It's 35 a year, sets him apart from, not just all the other receivers, but, all of the other non-quarterbacks. And, I think for 49ers fans, that's significant as well because Nick Bosa was that guy before this, the highest paid non-quarterback. Now it's Jefferson and, both really strong contracts. That's kind of how it works, right? You are great. You have a team that values you. You get the money you deserve. I think for Bosa, it was like that. For Jefferson, it was like that as well. But yeah, I mean, it does have, I would say, wide-ranging ramifications on the receiver market. For Brandon Aiyuk, as well as, CeeDee Lamb, as well as Jamar Chase. I mean, this is the new benchmark. Now, I think for Aiyuk, maybe not as significant as, let's say, for CeeDee Lamb, because, look, there's a lot of comparisons you can make for players. I think probably for Brandon, maybe the closest comp is the Amon-Ra St. Brown contract. And I think, look, if he's in that wheelhouse, anywhere near that wheelhouse, I think he's done extremely, extremely well. But I think that contract probably has a little more relevance to him than this blockbuster Justin Jefferson deal does today.
I would agree with you 100%. And I know 49ers fans are on Twitter. I don't want to shock you, Ian, but 49ers fans on Twitter are going a little bit crazy and saying, why have they waited so long? It's only going to make it harder. But this is what they do. This is how they do it. They do their deals a little bit later. But in this particular situation, does it feel different than the Deebo Samuel deal? Does it feel different than the Nick Bosa deal to you?
I mean, I think, well, for the Deebo deal, that was a challenging deal to do. It was hard. There was a trade request. There was a lot of tension. And I think it took some really true professionals to get that thing done from the 49ers standpoint and from the agent standpoint as well. I felt like the Nick Bosa deal was, an incredible deal for Bosa, obviously. And, his agent using as much leverage as he possibly had to get the best deal for his client, which is what agents should do. And, that was tense as well. This doesn't feel maybe as tense. Now, I mean, I do think Brandon Aiyuk is going to get a fantastic deal when it's all said and done. But this one, maybe because, the 49ers have been so proactive in getting out there and being like, we want him on our team. We don't want to trade him. This is one of our guys. There were all these rumors, and at every different point, they've stepped in to be like, hang on, we want him here. We want to get a deal done. So it hasn't been as sort of crazy, maybe as some of the others. But still, very high stakes negotiations. And I think in the end, he's going to get a really, really good deal.
I think he will too. Do you think, in your professional opinion, I kind of go back and forth on this, that this one will get done a little bit sooner than the Deebo deal did, maybe sooner than Bosa? I think the 49ers would hope sooner than Bosa because Bosa was 11th hour heading into Pittsburgh. But
right.
I do you think there's a chance this gets done this week, or are we looking at a late July deal per usual?
The one thing about these negotiations, especially when you get to the really, really high-level players like Brandon Aiyuk is, they could happen at any time, right? Because they're always sort of one offer away. You're nowhere, it's not close. Then it's like, all right, here's our next offer. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is something we can work with. I have not gotten a sense right now that anything's imminent. That does not mean that it's not. I'm just saying, I haven't sensed, that sort of momentum. And, look, these sort of mini deadlines are all just that. You know,
Right.
if Brandon doesn't get a deal today or this week, like, okay, you know, there'll be a storyline. Will he, will he not show up to minicamp? Most people end up showing up, and
Yeah.
if they don't have a contract, not participating, totally fine. But there's no game being played next week. So if it happens now, if it happens in the middle of the summer, if it happens before training camp, that's sort of all the same to me. The biggest question would be, what if it doesn't get done by the start of training camp?
Right.
Then what happens? Is it Bosa, which it would be a holdout? Is it a hold in? Does he just say, you know what, I'm just going to play it out? Like, there's a lot of options there. I would say the start of training camp is probably the biggest next deadline.
So if there isn't one in the start of training camp, and this is completely hypothetical, entirely your opinion, does he hold out or does he just let it play out?
That's a question I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
Well, no, I mean, look, he's a huge part of the team, and there's different calculations you can make as a player. You can say, I want to get paid because I deserve it, and I'm not stepping on the field in any meaningful way until I get paid. Or you can say, we're not in the same ballpark, and the only way to get me to be in that ballpark you're at is to go out and play and show you that I'm one of the best receivers in the NFL. Or there's somewhere in between, right? And, I think right now it's all pretty up in the air where Brandon is. But again, we're not truly going to know until you get to like a meaningful deadline.
So this week is veteran minicamp, mandatory minicamp. As you mentioned in the past, we've seen Deebo Samuel show up, not participate in practice. We've seen Nick Bosa do the same thing. I would expect that we will probably see Brandon Aiyuk there, not participating with there. I will give a little anecdote. It's not all that interesting, but actually it's kind of interesting. I mean, I remember during the Deebo talks, and it was really tense, and the trade requests and all of the things. But at minicamp, when he was there and they were doing drills, his level of excitement over touchdowns, from the offense and big plays from the offense said to me, like, this guy does want to be here. No matter what else is going on, you can't fake that kind of excitement. The cameras weren't on at that point. So I think that's just something that I say for fans to listen to. There's a lot that goes on in social media. There's a lot of rumors. At the end of the day, these guys want to play football, and it's the best situation for Brandon Aiyuk to stay in San Francisco and play there. So no matter what you hear, these are just like little anecdotes to remember. But with that in mind, there's been someone else absent from OTAs that's causing a bit of a stir among 49ers fans, and that's, of course, Christian McCaffrey. I said before on this podcast that he's been at every other 49ers OTAs, but he's only had one other 49ers OTA. So that's something to keep in mind. But it certainly is kind of a big deal that he's not there, because it was a big deal that he was there and so much was made of it. Where do you think things stand there? I'm sure he will be at mandatory minicamp. Where do you think that stands? Is he sending a message to the organization like, you know what, I need more money too? And he's not wrong.
I mean, first of all, he deserves all the money.
All of it.
I
agree.
All the money. I have not gotten the sense that this is a money play. I think sometimes there are things that are bigger than football, that are more important than football. That would be one thing. Sure. I wasn't sure what's public or what's not, but sure, that would be something that'd be more important than football. So, look, I mean, he deserves a new contract. He deserves all the money. He is an excellent player. And I think for the 49ers, they don't need any validation because they get his play on the field. But that was one of the best trades in recent memory, one of the smartest trades in recent memory. And for sure, like, if he were to get a new contract, I would say whatever it is, he deserves it. I just haven't gotten the sense that that's what this is. I get the sense it's more like there's a lot going on away from the field that is really important. And that probably takes some precedence. So, like, I don't, if you were to say to me, like, do you know that Christian McCaffrey wants a new contract? I could not definitively say that. Or I will say myself, my own opinion, he deserves everything.
I would agree with that. Like, literally all of it. Just give it to him. He can play every position, so just see how it goes. Sure. So as we head into minicamp, the 49ers have had a lot of change in this offseason. And I would say kind of a lot of change for a team that was just in the Super Bowl and lost by 3 points in overtime. And a lot of change to make themselves better. They lose Eric Armstead, but I think on the aggregate, They upgrade the defensive line, a lot of new faces there. They have a new defensive coordinator. Brandon Staley has come in as an assistant head coach / defense is his official title, but it looks like, or sounds like he'll be working a lot with Nick Sorensen, but also working a lot with Kyle Shanahan in talking to him about what defenses are seeing. Going to be changes in the secondary. So when you look at this team and you look at a team that really was just in the Super Bowl, you look at this offseason, kind of what intrigues you the most? We'll start there. What intrigues you the most, just kind of in all those changes?
Well, I think first of all, as far as the defensive changes, I think it'll help. There were moments, you know, a very high profile timeout would be one of them. But there were moments when you could tell that Kyle Shanahan just wanted more from his defense. It is a very talented group. I think Steve Wilkes did a lot of really good things. And I think, if he gets the opportunity, he will be a very good head coach at some point again in the NFL. But it's clear Kyle Shanahan wanted more. And, the search for Nick Sorensen was one where they did a real search. I got the sense they really did look at a couple different options. But even from the beginning, it seemed to me like this was probably the guy that made the most sense. He's been in the system, he knows Kyle well, he knows the talents. This makes a lot of sense. And they kind of backstopped it with Brandon Staley, who, I think can be a really good leader, has been a really good leader, and is a really good defensive mind, and they will work together. And, I think this will be a net positive for the 49ers. As far as everything else, they should be sort of the same. Really good right there. Plenty of opportunities for Brock Purdy to say, I'm the guy who can get the team there. And then plenty of other opportunities for all of the talent around him, which, again, is considerable talent to show, you don't need to do it all yourself. I think it's a really good team. I think they'll be in a very similar situation next year as they were this past year.
So position group that stands out to me is the secondary, because there are some questions there at corner and at safety. You have Talanoa Hufanga coming off a ACL injury. They draft Malik Mustafa. They have Jair Brown, who played well. It wasn't perfect, but certainly played well when thrust into a situation as a rookie. But there have been talks that perhaps they'd like to add another, safety to the group. At cornerback, you have Deommodore Lenoir and Charvarius Ward, both going to the last years of their contract. They draft Renardo Green. They sign Isaac Yodom, Rock Ya-Sin, and I hope I'm saying Isaac Yodom right. I'm never 100% sure that I am, but I think I am. And Chase Lucas, who was thought probably would be a little bit more of a special teams guy, but actually flashed a little bit in OTAs. And again, it's OTAs in May, so we'll see. So I feel we're going to see a number of changes back there. Do you think that's a position group where the 49ers historically haven't put as much emphasis on it? Right. And this year saying, we're going to have to start putting a lot more emphasis on this.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say, in this defense, you can, because they've had plenty of pressure generated, from the front seven, from the front four, it hasn't had to be a high money spot. And I don't know that it'll be this year. The Charvarius Ward signing was a great signing. Drafting Hufanga was a huge success. And, the fact that his ACL was early enough where, probably should be fine for the season, could be, assuming it all goes well and the healing is as it should. He should be one of the better defensive players in the NFL. He's a really, really talented player.
Also going to the last year of his contract.
Right. And, not that, most of these guys do not need motivation, but you've seen players show out in contract years and force teams to pay them. And I think that's a excellent outcome for all. But to me, it's a fairly deep group. The signings of guys like, Rock Ya-Sin. These are not blockbuster signings. No. These are depth pieces where in week 7 or 8, if you look out there and he's starting, it's you know what? We will be okay. I think it's a pretty well-rounded group. You can always add. I'm just not sure they need to, unless there's something you see in training camp where they're all right, we need one more key piece.
Yeah, and I don't know that they do. I think what they've said is in a perfect world, they're planning on having Renardo Green start inside. And I think it sounds like they haven't flat out said this, but in a perfect world, if he could work inside, you have Ward and Lenoir on the outside, you have him on the inside, and then everybody else essentially is competing for those backup spots. I just think we're going to probably see some different faces in those backup spots, but they upgraded their depth. That's really what they did. They put themselves in a position, like you said, if he's starting week 8, they'll be fine, where they haven't necessarily had that in the past. So let's talk a little bit quickly about offense. And then I have one other thing that I actually didn't prepare you for, but I think you'll be okay with it. Okay. And if you're not, you don't have to do it. But going a little bit back to Aiyuk, obviously the Niners signed Juwan Jennings last week. We're seeing a little bit, it feels like a little bit of a different offensive philosophy. And I think that's because of Brock Purdy, that the wide receivers are becoming even more important in this offense. Maybe tight ends, not as much. They tried to get Brock Wright. It didn't work out. George Kittle, by his own admission last week, was like, our tight end room, I'm paraphrasing, but basically tight end room is me, and then we'll see. They really don't have a true tight end too. So I have a question for you on Brock Purdy. Really, what has he done for Kyle Shanahan in this offense and just being able to open it up in a way they couldn't have in the past?
Well, I think the most important thing from a team building standpoint is he's been awesome while being cheap. I mean, this is like, this is how you do it. This is how you sort of take advantage of a window, is you pay guys that you may not otherwise be able to pay, like, really good depth receivers who are restricted free agents, for instance, because you're not paying a quarterback. You're paying him as little as you possibly can. And I think, I don't know that it's a team that's sort of gone away from the tight end. I just think they have really good players at receiver. And it's like, the Pearsall pick, the sort of much discussed Pearsall pick, I know it kind of got everyone talking, got me talking about what does this mean for Brandon, what does this mean for Debo, etc. I think it was really just like, this is the best player that's available right now, and that's a good thing. And so I don't know that it's like a concerted effort. They just have really talented receivers, and it's really hard to find good tight ends. I mean, that's why the Brock Wright, offer sheet was so interesting, because they were clearly like, it's hard to find this guy. So, like, let's try to pay him in a way that, we otherwise wouldn't be able to. Didn't work out. But it was a clear, like, this is something where it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for us to find otherwise.
And I'm glad you said about the Pearsall pick, because I never thought it meant anything for Debo or Brandon. I agree with you. He just was the best player available, and he will work pretty well in this offense. And it kind of goes a little bit to what we were saying before about the secondary. If someone gets hurt and for some reason he's now a bigger role mid-season, they'll probably be okay. I mean, from what we've seen, it's so early, but from what we've seen and from what they've seen on tape and how he fits, I think that's a lot of, what that was. And this is a team that was fine tuning. This team's not in a rebuild. This team didn't have to go out and do something major. Like, as I said at the beginning, they were just in the Super Bowl and they barely lost it. So there were one real fluky special teams play away probably from winning it. So, and that's another area they really upgraded. They really upgraded their special teams. So they went out and kind of fine tuned where they needed to. Okay, Ian. So this is something I do with the 49ers players. And if you don't want to do it, I won't hold it against you, but it is fun. It's in the name. It's called 5 Fun Facts. And essentially they say 5 things about themselves you wouldn't necessarily otherwise know. And it could be anything from like your favorite meal, how many kids you have, hobbies, what you're watching on Netflix. So would you be up for 5 Fun Facts with Ian Rapoport?
Sure. I can come up with some stuff. How do we do it?
All right. So we could just start it, or I can prompt you if that's more helpful.
You can prompt me. I'll come up with some things.
Okay. We'll start with, what is your favorite meal?
I could probably eat Cajun food every day of my life.
Okay.
So I would say like a nice bowl of gumbo would be, I think, perfect for me.
Do you have a favorite place in New Orleans or anywhere where you find that?
I mean, Cochon is probably my favorite place in New Orleans.
Okay.
I don't know that it's my favorite gumbo place, but that's probably my favorite place in New Orleans. And I'm very much looking forward to the Super Bowl this year, so I could eat Cajun food every single day.
See this, and that's why I brought up New Orleans, because the Super Bowl. We're a full circle situation here. Do you have any hobbies that are kind of fun that we should know?
I play golf as much as I humanly possibly can.
Okay.
That is my number one hobby. I have other, do a lot of stuff with my kids and a lot of family stuff. But as far as just me personally, I want to play golf every day.
How many kids do you have? That's a fun fact. Tell us about your kids.
I have 2 kids, Max and Jude, 9 and almost 11.
Oh, amazing. Love that. Anything? Are you watching anything on Netflix?
Yes. My wife and I are watching Friday Night Lights,
Best
which
show ever.
we somehow didn't see. It kind of missed it at the beginning, and we're thinking of something in, this past spring. We're like, what can we do? Like, let's start watching it. So we are now on season 5, the last season, and it is beyond awesome and as good as everybody said.
The Michael B. Jordan season.
Yeah, I mean, he was 4 and 5, and he is awesome. We love Vince.
I just want you to know I'm getting a little teary just thinking about it. That show is my everything. When you finish it, you have to text me after you watch the finale.
Well,
okay, and then last but not least, favorite movie of all time. Actually, no, I'm gonna do a music question. Who's your favorite band?
My favorite artist of all time is Notorious B.I.G.
Okay, fantastic. Did you ever get to see him in concert or anything?
I was offered a ticket to 1996 Hot 97 Summer Jam where he was performing. I was not able to go, figuring no big deal. I'll just see him another time. And then he unfortunately passed away, and now I never got to see him.
Oh, that
big regret. Big regret in my life.
I can understand that. Well, Ian, I appreciate your insight so much and your time coming onto the podcast. As I mentioned, Ian is an NFL Network insider. You can catch him on the Insiders Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Pacific on NFL Network. Ian, where else can everybody find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok at RapSheet, all the places.
You guys can find me on Twitter at Tracy FGSN, on Instagram and TikTok at Tracy Sandler. We are brought to you by FIVO. We are brought to you by Bet Online. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating and super positive review. And with that, I believe that's all my announcements. Happy Veteran Minicamp to all who celebrate. Bye all.